You are now tuned in to the Last of Its Kind podcast, produced by humans, made for humans.
This is Mike Johns, bringing it to you live each and every week with Yo, Check This Out. And today we have a special guest, Viet Nguyen, who's the current president for the 5G Americas. And we're going to be talking about when 5G took over the world. Yo, check this out. We connect the streets.
Yeah, baby.
There's over 2 billion people now with 5G global connectivity. Viet Nguyen, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Hey, thank you, Mike, for having me on this podcast. It's so exciting to get a chance to talk with folks. Currently, the acting president over here at 5G Americas.
Well, something like that. I'm not really.
Right, great. The current acting president. So let me just dive in. 5G global connectivity is over 2 billion. First quarter 2024. How did we get here?
Yeah, this is fantastic news. We're actually almost at 2 billion. Excellent. It's about 1.95 billion right now.
I just rounded it up to 2. I just rounded it up.
Oh yeah, fantastic. So what? I mean, that's like a quarter of the planet already, right? Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, right. We got 8 billion people on the planet. We got 25% of them that are already connected here. You know, it's really interesting because wireless cellular goes in this cycle. It goes about every 10 years, right? And we're in this cycle right now. For those who don't know what 5G means, it really means it's the 5th generation of wireless cellular technologies. And we're about midway through this cycle right now for 5G, and we're moving into this period where we're going to start to see 5G advanced networks coming down the pike. Right. But yeah, we are at 2 billion globally, and actually here in different places like in North America, that's actually growing right now at about 60% annually. It's moving very, very fast right now. A lot of adoption is taking place. It's pretty exciting. And when you think about like where we've been to where we are now, right? You sort of think, if you were to peel back the generations, there wasn't really a 1G generation. That was back on those analog phones, right?
Right, analog phones.
Yeah, you had those voice calls. That was back in the 80s. In the 90s, with 2G, you started to get, sort of texting and you started getting some email capabilities that were there. 3G in the 2000s, where you started to get mobile data.
Well, hold on. Let me ask you something. What had they ever identified 1G? Was that ever a thing called 1G, or was it analog? Did we start?
It was analog. Yeah, it was analog, but we sort of, as this designation kind of morphed over time, people kind of sort of backwards, revised it and said, this is sort of 1G. It's not really official, but that's sort of where we were at that point.
Got it. So let me ask you this. What were some of the key challenges and breakthroughs in the global rollout of 5G networks?
Some of the breakthroughs that we actually saw were some technological breakthroughs, things like massive improvements in terms of the density of the antennas. We saw the ability to utilize those antennas in different ways, like a technology called beamforming, where you could actually shape the beam of the communications to the devices. And actually, we have some capabilities now that allow for network slicing to occur, where you're actually just using the precise amount of spectrum and power and capabilities on these networks to deliver that communication to these devices.
This is amazing.
Now that brings me to, when you're able to, I haven't done it, but I know people, if you don't have Wi-Fi, you could use your phone to bring the Wi-Fi over to your laptop. Is that splicing?
That's basically a handover, where if Wi-Fi is not available, you can actually do tethering,
Tethering. There's the word, tethering. What's the difference between tethering and splicing?
Yeah, so tethering is really, as I sort of mentioned, right? You're trying to connect a Wi-Fi device or something, and trying to connect to the internet, and you actually utilize 5G or that cellular connection on sort of as the backbone. Network slicing is actually really different. It's actually something that was introduced in 5G, and it actually allows for really, really precise levels of usage of the network.
What an amazing concept.
So, before, in 4G networks, it was kind of like a best guess, right? We're going to get you connected, and you're going to have some sort of level of connectivity. It was not as efficient, but with network slicing now, you can really sort of pinpoint exactly what you need.
That's what I'm talking about, baby. No hassles.
And I'll give you a for instance, right? Like that mobile device that's delivering, let's say, a streaming video signal.
Yeah.
That's very, very different than something that might require just a little bit of like data, like a sensor. Two completely different uses. And under 5G networks now, the level of precision that you can get for that and for things like real-time processing, we're just a whole entire generation away from where we were even in the 2010s with 4G.
That is a fantastic idea.
Well, as I mentioned, when I asked the question, what were some of the key challenges? One thing that came to mind for me, and this was personal with family, 5G was responsible for COVID.
You have a sickness.
Did you ever hear that conspiracy theory? You know, the misinformation that was out there, and it's still circulating. There's still people that believe 5G played a role with COVID, that there's some sort of relationship between the two. What is your take to that?
Yeah, there's a lot of conspiracy theories that have been floating around, and this generally happens every time that there's a new generation of wireless that comes through. There really isn't any scientific evidence, and in fact, there's actually advisory bodies and scientific bodies around the world, CDC, the FDA, the FCC in the United States, across all across Asia and Europe and Australia. All of these regulatory agencies work hard to test all of this information and make sure that this technology is safe. We've been using 5G technologies around the world for over 5 years now. We actually haven't seen any sort of evidence in regards to that.
I see.
I will talk to you a little bit about the challenges, though, right? In terms of because you asked that question, right? What were some of the challenges in rolling out these networks? COVID was actually one of those challenges. It actually caused a lot of supply chain disruptions, over time. And one of those really critical pieces was semiconductors. These devices require a lot of these really sophisticated chips to be able to deliver those 5G signals. And that was a real challenge for a couple of years. Now, fortunately, we're beyond that stage now, right. That things have sort of normalized, and we're starting to see some of that. And so you'll start to see, a lot more availability in these 5G chips, in laptops and other types of mobile devices.
Excellent.
Let me ask, moving right along rather, in what way has 5G impacted different industries such as healthcare, transportation, and entertainment?
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of different ways. There's some really great specific examples that we got. We've got so we're a trade association, 5G Americas is, that promotes 5G and LTE technologies. And one of our member companies actually partnering with organizations like Vitus Healthcare, where they're actually using 5G to be able to deliver high resolution imaging. It's really helping with their healthcare specialists to be able to better diagnose and analyze sort of X-rays and things like that really requires sort of that visual capability.
Excellent.
There's I think over the Cleveland Clinic, over with a partnership with Case Western Reserve, they're actually utilizing 5G powered AR. So augmented reality for medical training.
Yes.
You sort of stick those headsets on those students, and they can actually sort of see these structures a little bit better. That's on the healthcare side. Over on the transportation side, there are some companies like UPS where they're utilizing 5G to enhance their fleet management, basically allowing for sort of this real-time tracking of the delivery trucks, with additional route optimization and helping to sort of monitor the health of their vehicles. So that's pretty exciting stuff to see. And, over on the entertainment side, I think folks who maybe listen, to this particular podcast see these advertisements all the time. There's 5G utilized in the NFL, with football at the Super Bowl, for instance. And so where they're deploying a lot of these 5G ultra wideband networks to support the usage of sort of high resolution and just really high resolution video, allowing for multi-angle replays, a lot of real-time stats and things like that they're sending to all of, tens of thousands of mobile devices in these stadiums. And it provides that capacity for that particular use. So lots of really interesting things. Depending on the particular industry, there are significant uses, right? Like, you take a look at things like manufacturing, where John Deere is using 5G to connect and control their robotic systems on the production floor.
Yes.
Kind of allows them to move around all of these different devices, different pieces of heavy machinery, and sort of control them in a real-time fashion. And that's sort of what I mentioned a little bit earlier, is one of the capabilities that 5G delivers is a real-time, low latency capability that really is helpful for things like manufacturing, right? Where you actually need to be very, very precise.
Church.
Now, I just recently attended the Kendrick and Friends concert. I'm sure you're aware of the Kendrick and Drake beef.
Yeah, I'm the sixth guy, I'm the front runner.
And yeah, this is in Inglewood, California. You have everybody at the stadium. It's congested. 5G, people don't realize while you're there for the entertainment, and it could be a Kendrick concert, it could be Taylor Swift, everybody has their phones, everybody's taking photos, everybody's streaming, you're in your digital life. What is the importance of why 5G is needed at a Kendrick concert or any music event, right? And just explaining for our listeners, obviously for iHeart, the big play is music, and so I'd love to follow that up with how 5G is reshaping music. But let's just start with the concert experience. I'm at the Kendrick. If I didn't have 5G, what would not happen?
Yeah, it's that high resolution images that you sort of get back, right? That those are real. Like high resolution video is a real data hog. It requires a lot of data to kind of transfer that over. And if you actually don't have that solid connection, you can't get that delivered very well. And in addition, one of the other capabilities is that 5G networks can actually manage like 1 million devices per square kilometer. So, at these concerts where you've got 80,000 people or 100,000 people in some instances that are there, they handle that just fine, right? In previous, generations, that was a real issue. You would get the network clogged up.
Latency.
You wouldn't be able to download stuff very quickly or upload, things very well. And so if you're an influencer, like you want to be able to get your message out quick in real time, right? And across social media, that's where you really need the strength of a 5G connection to be able to allow you to do that.
You hit it on the head with that. So for a lot of our listeners, especially millennials, Gen Z, social media,
totally.
The what would we say? The bloodline to it would be the 5G capability.
Yeah. There's even other things like when you go through even the airport, getting to the concert nowadays, right? You've got your booking ticket, you've got your facial recognition and two-factor authentication on your phone. It's really hard to get anywhere without using your phone nowadays, right?
Oh man,
and it's like impossible. And so if you don't have that connectivity, then you're running into problems. And and even if you're a creator where you're making videos and stuff, like you're gonna have to do a lot of uploads and downloads of videos and documents and things like that. Nowadays, everything's in the cloud, right? So you might be utilizing something where your video editing requires connectivity to your cloud, and if you actually don't have that, where you are standing, that's an issue, right? And Wi-Fi isn't everywhere.
Yes, so true. And you brought up a good point there. When I look at the creator economy, and that's booming, right? That's business. A big play in that is going to be 5G technology, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
that becomes the foundation of it all, right? In order to do a lot of these things that you're doing, you're going to need that type of connectivity.
Yeah, just think of something like you're doing a drone shot, right? And you've got a drone that's over there right now. It's taking that video, it's saving it, on the drone, and then you have to get your camera to kind of work with that. With a 5G connected drone, over the next few years, it may be able to upload that into your cloud, and that just speeds up your process, right? So you don't actually have to manage all these different things. And so if you're a creator, that's a huge benefit to be able to address something like that.
And some of the things that 5G has allowed us to do is innovation in music, such as live streaming, reimaging a live show, making music more immersive. You talked about augmented reality, VR. And then one of the things that I really was impressed with is how musicians can collaborate, not just here in the US, but globally, right? And 5G makes that possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Think about that augmented reality thing where even if you're looking at your phone, let's say you're a concert goer and the ticket you got is kind of blocked by whatever view you have. Under certain systems, right? If you got a camera feed, you might be able to experience it at another vantage point, right? So you might be able to kind of see around a particular corner just because the local venue is streaming it out, from a particular spot. So there's lots of opportunities to kind of get a better experience, and just get better connected with whoever is on stage there. And of course, at the same time, right? If you're part of that production team for that particular entertainer, and you want to maybe figure out, hey, is that song tracking really well, right? Like maybe you've got some sort of measurement where you do a real time question to your audience, and you can get instant feedback, right? And so if everyone's connected, that allows for that type of thing to occur, like a poll or just a question or just a response or something like that in real time.
Wow. Now, Digital Mind State reports that the number of connected devices in the world is expected to reach 18.2 billion by 2025. What role does 5G play in this? And I almost feel like in asking you, it's the chicken or the egg. It's like, as technology advances, look at our homes. How many people, you could be a single person in a home and have 4 screens.
Yeah.
Multiple TV sets. Nowadays, your refrigerator has a screen connected, but of course the phones and then your laptop and probably a tablet. What role does 5G play in this?
Yeah, it's really allowing kind of like this fabric of communication to allow for these devices to kind of communicate with each other and with you, right? Mm-hmm. And so they're not all out and on their own. They're talking to each other. They kind of understand, if this sensor, if I got this home, sensor, right? That might be a 5G connected, home sensor. It can talk to my phone, and then I can then alter, make some changes to the temperature or the lighting or whatever that I need for that particular. I'll give you, for instance, right now I'm sitting here. I've got an app that basically controls my lighting for for this particular call. I know we're on a podcast, so you really can't see it, right. But it's nice to be able to be in the other room and just sort of hit a button and it comes back and it just lights it up perfectly for the studio that I'm in. So there's lots of ways that as these devices proliferate over the next few years, 5G connectivity is going to allow for more efficient use of some of this stuff. It's smart enough to actually turn off some of the network devices when they're not in use. So that's a huge saver in terms of just energy savings, and that's really great for fighting climate change.
Oh, that's a good point there. That's a great segue to this next question. What new opportunities do you see coming out of this 5G technology boom?
Yeah, one of the things is that 5G doesn't exist in like its own silo. Everything is connected. It helps. It influences other technologies just like other technologies influence it. So what you're going to see in the next few years.
Good point. I like that.
Yeah, it's like increased integration, like with AI, right?
Yes.
AI is influencing 5G networks as much as 5G is influencing AI. Like if you can't access your chatbot or AI because you happen to be driving out in the middle of a rural area, that's kind of a problem, right? Like that AI is not going to be able to access the internet, and it's going to give you some garbage answers. At the same time, we use AI in 5G networks to actually improve the signal and improve the connectivity. There's lots of things that are happening where it can start to predict, if there's going to be 80,000 people that are going to be coming to this stadium. It knows, and it can start to program the network ahead of time so that you get better connectivity there. The other thing that's really exciting is increased integration with satellite providers. There is a lot of standards that go into 5G networks, and one of the things that's happening right now is partnerships and that will connect satellite with 5G networks. So if you're in the middle of a place where you actually don't even have cellular connection, you might be able to in the next few years, get text, get email, and that partnership continues to improve. And as those satellite connections start to improve, we may be able to see increased bandwidth for even new applications. So you might be way out on the beach in the middle of nowhere and still be able to be connected.
Good point.
There's one other thing that I do want to point out too, right? Robotics. So that is an emerging area right now. You kind of imagine like, robots right now are kind of tethered, right? You got them on a cable. They need energy, but then they also might need the data to go in and out of that robot.
Right.
At some point, we're going to want them to actually leave the lab and actually maybe go out in the the middle of the yard or out on the street with autonomous vehicles. If you want them to be able to leave that lab and still be able to be connected, you really need that wireless cellular network to be able to do that.
Wow. That just so many things is going on in my brain right now. I think of digital dogs, Boston Dynamics. And New York actually plans to roll that out. So this is where 5G network would be very much needed, correct?
Yeah, right. So that's
being able to patrol a city,
be able to patrol a city,
various landmass.
Yeah. Now, obviously, like some of these robots are going to have like some pre-built maps and things like that they're going to understand. But if you're going to be doing like anything in real time, where you're like maybe that robot dog is like turning around the corner and it needs to sense something and it needs to send that data, it needs to send that video back to someplace, right? And so if you actually don't have connectivity there, it really can't do that. And so that's what 5G sort of allows you to do, is to be able to connect all these things. And so that's a pretty exciting time, right? So
very. I mean, I know T-Mobile's just a couple months ago just did a special on 5G and robotics. That leads me into talking about 5G and the new space economy. What's the relationship there?
Yeah. So as we so you talk about outer space, right? So
correct.
So
the final
as
frontier.
I sort of mentioned, right? The final frontier.
Yes.
Again, I sort of mentioned a little bit earlier, right? We're in these 5G standards. There's increased integration with satellites, and so satellites is really that key point to where you can actually be able to beam that signal.
Is this the same type of 5G that consumers are using from their phone peer-to-peer, or is it a different spectrum? Just help me in the education for me and our audience.
Yeah, satellite tends to use different spectrum. Okay, so it uses a different band of spectrum than these land-based networks. But what's happening right now is that these standards are allowing these satellites to communicate with our land-based cellular networks, and so it doesn't matter, right? Like they can sort of talk to each other, and so if you are communicating across that satellite network, you can talk to somebody that's down on the ground. Vice versa, and so that allows you that launching point to, let's say, if you've got a satellite right now, a lot of the satellites are pointed downwards, right? Those communication satellites are pointed downwards because you might want to do GPS, or you might want to do some tech stuff, or like Starlink, for instance, getting that connectivity for internet access. But if you start pointing those satellites sort of beyond, right? You could actually get connectivity. And I know that, for instance, one of our member companies is actually working on a project right now where they're doing connectivity with 4G LTE on the moon, right? That's something that they've got.
I just wanted to ask you about that. Like, would the satellites that are in the sky, they would almost be like the midpoint between Earth and Moon in our progression, getting to the Moon and setting up colonies there? Is that kind of in theory how that would work? The 5G or what 7G technology that comes behind? The satellites almost become that bridge to make things happen on the Moon. Would that?
Yeah. That's I mean, that's the idea, right? That's there. Now, obviously, I'm not a satellite guy, and I don't pretend to be. But the idea is the same, right? You want to have a communication link that allows you to be able to do that. And if you can build satellite arrays that allow for that kind of communication to happen, there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to talk with ground-based networks.
Wow. Now, clearly there is a very, very competitive race between T-Mobile and Verizon, and I'll add AT&T in that. I always love to say AT&T is the grandparents, Verizon is the parents, the cool kids are T-Mobile. That's another conversation, but we just see that happening right now. But I'm curious, and it's very competitive. between T-Mobile and Verizon in particular. I've noticed this with the Super Bowl. Who's covering the Super Bowl? Verizon got that deal. T-Mobile with golf. Can you expand on this competitiveness, and ultimately, is that competitiveness good for overall America?
Yeah, it is a very, very competitive market. We've got the big three network operators inside the U.S. are really, just sort of hammering away at each other. As a trade association, we've got a lot of members, and so we definitely have to we tend to work on areas of commonality, right, where we can actually kind of cooperate, where the industry kind of agrees upon. But yeah, I mean, it's really, really helpful to have that competition for the consumer, because it helps to helps to mediate prices. I'll give you, for instance, one of the real strong benefits of 5G networks today is a technology called fixed wireless access. That is otherwise known as home internet, right? You sort of see, some of these cellular providers saying, "Hey, I can give you home internet," and really what it is it's setting up like effectively a mini, sort of cell tower, inside your home, and you can get your broadband connection. And we're seeing today where you're getting, connectivity at around 200 megabits per second. Which is pretty competitive with like a lot of sort of landline, connectivity in certain parts of the country. And so there may be places where you can't run fiber out there, very effectively, or maybe, cable doesn't serve that area. And so in those areas, having that additional provider to be able to provide broadband is huge. There's 8 million of those customers in the United States today, and that adoption's happening pretty rapidly. So it's not just within that competition between the cellular providers,
yes,
but it's also, a lot of competition with existing cable providers and other sort of telecom companies as well.
Got it. Man, I got so many more questions. I could go on with you, but I want to wrap up with some key questions. As we're talking about 5G, where does the Internet of Things play?
Yeah, the Internet of Things. So 5G actually has a standard that it is rolled out that actually works with what we sort of IoT, Internet of Things devices, that allows for really, really efficient use of energy and of data. A lot of those IoT devices tend to sip data, right? They just send a little bit of data here and there, but you have to stay on. And 5G allows for much more efficient use of that kind of connectivity. There is going to be many billions more, IoT devices, covering the planet than there are that you would use in your hand, right, as a smartphone. It's going to be everywhere. Those sensors are going to be everywhere.
Where are we then currently with the whole IoT play? Let's say in transportation and just our day-to-day life. What stage are we at currently?
So IoT has been around for a long time. It has been around, under previous wireless cellular technologies as well. Even in the 3G and 4G generations. So that's a really mature technology. But where we are with 5G is, again, that level of efficiency, the network slicing, the sort of the real-time low latency capabilities that 5G delivers. That's sort of the next stage of where we're going to see these improvements in IoT. So if you get things like in those factories where you've got a sensor and it's able to deliver that signal that's like less than 10 milliseconds latency, you can get super precise machine to machine communication, right? And so you think of that assembly line where these things are stamping out, product every millisecond or so, right? You need that level of fine level of control, and that's really where 5G really shines with IoT.
Got it. So I look at IoT in terms of today's IoT, and maybe I'm just so sci-fied out, but I look at devices, my phone talking to the refrigerator notifying, hey, we're low on milk. An alert goes off to the phone. Maybe the phone connects to the drone goes off and delivers. That's what I'm looking at in terms of IoT, or while I'm driving on the freeway in my autonomous vehicle, right? now my phone is connected to the Walmart, and it lets, hey, while we're en route, knowing, hey, we need to veer left and go over here to pick up something. Maybe I feel like that's the Jetsons, or am I too sci-fi'd out right now?
No, you're not too sci-fi'd out. I think, like all the pieces are in play, for that. We got line of sight to that, right? Like right now, right?
I'm sure you do. That's going to be like my last question. Yes.
Yeah, the line of sight is there, but the question is there's so many uses for this. Mm-hmm. The companies need to kind of figure out, like, what are we going to sort of push right now, like, because you got to scale that up, right?
Right. That's a good point. You got to scale that up. Yes. It's
not easy to go out and hit billions and billions and billions of devices right away. So they're going to be looking at, hey, what's going to be the best use case? Like, where are we going to be able to find the most need for this? And that's a learning process. Yeah. That's what the industry is kind of going through right now, is sort of figuring out, how do I make this happen in the best way? Is there a market there for what you just said, right?
Right.
Clearly, there's some sort of demand, but then they sort of need to figure out, like, how do we address this? How do we provide that connectivity without breaking the bank, or at least finding a way that that there's an exchange, right? That's appropriate.
Well, my final question, I was just getting the light here, so I'm going to consolidate it. What does the future hold for 5G Americas? And is it safe to say that every 10 years, there's going to be a new advancement? And so that next advancement would be 6G. When do you see that actually happening? Are we 4 years out?
Yeah, yes, we are. And we're about 5 years into this. We're going to start to see the standards being finalized around the end of 2028. And we're going to start to see some commercial delivery of like 6G, probably in the range of about 2030 or so. So we've got a little bit of got a little bit of time, but in the meantime, there is this evolution of 5G to 5G Advanced, and so some of these things that we talked about really come into play over the next few years. So again, that satellite connectivity, the AI, the integration with XR and VR, all those things you'll start to see over the next few years as these companies take advantage of these technologies.
So what does the future hold for 5G Americas? And by 2030, will you have to change your name?
Why does everyone keep saying it?
We get that question all the time. There is right now, it's kind of funny because 6G is, everyone sort of expects that to be the term. It hasn't been finalized. This is kind of done. Yeah, it's done internationally, these standards bodies.
Yeah.
And that term it's going to get there. When it does, you'll hear from us.
I like that. I like that. Well, Viet Nguyen, thank you so much for your time, your expertise, and talking to our audience. We greatly appreciate that. I got to have you back.
No, I'd be pleased to be back, Mike. This is great. I really enjoyed it.
And what I really love about this is being able to articulate it for the common ears. And ultimately, it's the common ears that are using this. I've been at a slew of 5G and 6G conferences where it's very technical, but ultimately it's the consumers that make this the reality. And so it's good to have these type of discussions where they can hear from the expert, understand what's going on, and be prepared. And that's why I bring you back on for another episode.
Yeah, that's exciting, and I'm right there with you. Right, I was one of those folks, earlier in my career where I didn't know anything about this stuff, and it's helpful to have somebody be able to explain it like what everybody should explain it as, rather than I love engineers, but sometimes they don't explain it very well.
I love when I look at politics, Ted Cruz said we have people making policies on AI and they're still using flip phones.
Yeah.
So whether it's Washington, D.C. to the common ears, all the way to Hollywood, there needs to be that education. And so I really like what your organization is doing in terms of 5G, making people aware of the furtherance of where the industry is going. Keep doing your thing.
No, thank you. You're doing it too, Mike. This podcast is just, it's probably more important, right?
Thank
so
you.
we all have our place in this ecosystem.
Absolutely. This is Mike Johns. Yo, check this out. We connect the streets. We're gone. Peace.
Yeah!
You just finished listening to another episode of Yo, Check This Out, connecting the streets from LA to the world. Follow Yo, Check This Out on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn for the hottest news in tech. Be sure to hit that like button.